Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, dear ITB family and ITB community joining us virtually in the live stream, but also being here. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. I was just scrolling through the booth, and it's very busy, right, in the conference hall. So thank you for making the time, and I think your calendars, they look scheduled from the morning to the evening hours, so it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for making time to join us here at the orange stage, at the distribution and marketing track. And now we are coming into our conversation with Google, talking and diving into the topic of Digital Markets Act. What's changing now in Europe? This is really the hot question of the hour, and I welcome now Lea Jordan here on stage because she knows all about our next guests.
Yes, I wish I knew everything about him. I don't, but I know who he is, and I'm excited to have him, and I hope you are as well. And yeah, Katie mentioned it, the DMA, Digital Markets Act. Actually, very, very important topic, because today is the day where it actually comes into force. It's a regulation enacted by the European Union last year. And as you can feel, I'm not an expert on the topic, so I'm equally excited as you to learn from our speaker what we have to know about it and what implications that has for our industry and what's changing in Europe. So please welcome with me on stage the Group Product Manager, Search at Google, James Byers. Please join me on stage. A warm welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
Now they said I know everything about you. I don't. So let me kick off with one question. So maybe learn a bit about one area. So what's your next travel destination? Do you have a favorite travel destination? Maybe it's lined up for you?
As my colleagues will know, I'm very lucky to live in Zurich in Switzerland.
Nice.
And I love to ski. So Easter this year will be at Zermatt, which is a magical place if you haven't been, in the shadow of the Matterhorn. It's magical. Wonderful.
And another person that prefers the mountains over the sea. Well, stage is yours. Thank you very much for being here. James Byers from Google. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Hi, everyone. Herzlich willkommen to all of you here in the wonderful city of Berlin, and perhaps my sympathies to those of you who, for transportation reasons, may enjoy the wonderful city an extra day or two unexpectedly. As Leah mentioned, today is the day that the Digital Markets Act comes into force in Europe, and I'm here to talk through those changes from Google's perspective, share with you what we've worked on over the last years as we work to meet the obligations of the DMA, and to show it to you. Rather than talking through the words of the DMA, I'm going to show you a series of screenshots of what this actually looks like on Google Search, looking at both lodging and flights, and telling you a little bit about how that extends to other parts of the search experience. The DMA's goal is to ensure fair and open digital markets within the EU, and it goes along with the Digital Services Act, both of which have come into force this year. And today we'll focus on Article 6.5. Article 6.5 is an anti-self-preferencing article, which effectively says that large digital services, such as Google, cannot prefer their own services versus others in the market. And we'll talk a little bit about what those services are. I will use the words vertical search service and the acronym VSS about 200 times in this presentation. My apologies. We'll talk about what that acronym means in a moment. It's actually quite straightforward. We'll also talk about this difficult balance between the needs of users of Google and travel services, the needs of businesses, including airlines and hotel operators, be they a single person or the world's largest chain, and the needs of the vertical search services, being meta search services and online travel agents, or OTAs. And as I mentioned, timing is everything. Today is the day. I think this was a great coincidence, but March 6th is the day the Digital Markets Act comes into force. So we picked the right day to have this session. So we've spent the last several years working with the European Union, with the suppliers, airlines, hoteliers, tourism companies of all shapes and sizes, with industry bodies, with users themselves, trying to find the right balance, the best balance between the needs of users, businesses, and vertical search services. For our users on Google, I think, of course, this is probably an intuitive part of this discussion. Users turn to us to ask every kind of question you can imagine, and it remains true today that some 15% of the queries we see on Google are new. We've never seen them before. So there is an immense variety in the set of questions we try to answer, and we try to help our users make difficult decisions, especially when we're able to connect those users to the ecosystem to actually help with, for example, a considered purchase like a vacation to Zermatt or air travel across the world. It's really part of our DNA, if you will, to form those connections in the web and in the travel ecosystems we support. Businesses, here I mean suppliers, hoteliers, chains, airlines, are a critical part of this story, of course, because they're the ones hosting guests, flying them around the world, buying aircraft, building buildings, putting people in them to service their customers. So it's incredibly important that we meet business needs. It's also important that we meet the needs and find balance with vertical search services. And again, vertical search service is a meta search service or an online travel agent. And the role of vertical search services, from our perspective, is to help guide users through these complex, often high-value, considered purchases. And you'll see in our solution that we're trying to find the balance of letting users continue onward with the vertical search services of their choice as they shop for a hotel or purchase a flight. There are two major principles that we've tried to hold above all others here. The first is that we're ensuring there is no favoring of Google's own separate services. Here we'll talk about hotels and flights as examples, but it's critical that they operate on a level playing field with other services in the market. And the second is we're aiming to expand opportunities for free for vertical search services in our ecosystem. And we'll show the ways we've done that and the different solutions we've brought to try and connect our users, connect those asking us questions with services where they can complete their journey. We'll show about 6 things today. I'll start with hotels, then we'll move to flights. Again here, my apologies. You'll see the acronym VSS many times. It's meta search and online travel agents. First, we'll show how we treat any links to Google just like links to any other VSS. Second, we'll show ways that we're bringing richer results for vertical search services, opportunities to present more engaging visual content, opportunities to show pricing in a more real-time way than through the crawled web. We'll also show how we're bringing query shortcuts across the entire set of search results to help the ecosystem better respond to user needs. We'll show a free VSS unit, a carousel that applies across all of these different verticals. And we'll show filters that allow users to zoom in just on vertical search services and also just on supplier web results. Without further ado, let's see how it looks. So as I mentioned, the first and most important principle here is that in the past, some of the links on a unit like this is a query for hotels in London, would lead to Google's hotel service. They no longer do in Europe. And we'll see where they lead and what this principle does as we find the balance I described earlier. So here's an example query. Again, hotels in London. Today, when a user clicks on a loft, London Excel, our example that we've used many times in these sessions, they will see a preview of the search results they would otherwise see if they had looked for that hotel directly. So you see on the left side a list of properties. When they click through, they see the preview on the right. And I'll show you more in the next slide of what's on that in that view. But it's a way for a user to see those same results with organic content from the web, with links to the supplier, with links to vertical search services, with reviews, to try and answer the question of whether this is the right hotel for them. And as we scroll down this preview, here you see the kind of content I've described, a summarization of reviews from different sources, some highlighted reviews themselves, attributes, factual attributes about that property, a carousel that allows for some navigation to alternatives, and organic content, links to websites of both supplier VSS and topical websites. One of the features you'll see across the search experience is this carousel I've described. And here we're allowing both vertical search services and suppliers to provide rich content that helps highlight, in response to a query like Hotels for London, the best offers they can provide, to provide pricing, and to provide a more rich visual experience on search rather than just a text-centered experience. Participation in all of the features that I show today are free, and you can find out more details about how these work on Google's website developer site. As I mentioned at the beginning, helping the ecosystem understand user intent is another very important principle of our solution. So at the top of the search results, you'll see a set of shortcuts. These are commonly searched for terms that help augment or sometimes narrow the search results for what a user's seeking. In this example, hotels in London again, when a user clicks on top rated, you see the shortcut highlight on the right. It's probably a little bit hard to see, but it becomes blue. And you see that the query for the entire page has changed. So now this is hotels in London top rated. We'll see the same thing in flights and in other verticals. The goal here is to let the entire page, all supplier and VSS content, respond to these key user shortcuts. And the goal is also to help users on every device, on every platform, do this quickly. Especially on mobile, it's often awkward for users to type their detailed queries, so clicking on the shortcut is a key part of that experience. I mentioned the carousel previously in the context of a hotel provider. Here we have another carousel, which is called the Vertical Search Service Carousel. We have here Expedia, Kayak, and the T from TripAdvisor. This experience elevates the vertical search service links that are already on the search results page and puts them in a carousel to give them more prominence and to give them some visual treatment that helps increase engagement. The order of the results in this carousel are the same order of the results on the search results page itself. So the same principles that underlie all of Google's ranking and the fair treatment of the ecosystem apply to this carousel as well. I should also mention that all of the features I'm showing today, of course, we're zoomed in a little bit so you can read them, but across the search results page, these units rank based on user interaction and a set of signals that Google uses to rank all of its results. So for different intents, for different queries, you'll see these results show up in different orders depending on how users interact with them. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at flights to describe some examples there. So I mentioned two more kinds of filters. A little bit harder to see, but I'll read through it here. In the top carousel below the search results box, there's a link to places, sites, and to lodging. And this is a way to help users zoom in if they're just interested in that vertical search service experience. If they know they're shopping and they know they're moving on in their shopping journey, and they want to only see those vertical search service results, they can do so by clicking on the link at the top. They can also click on more below the units and carousels I showed earlier to get to that same view. And there's a corresponding link for suppliers as well. So if you click on lodging at the top of the page, you filter just down to lodging results and remove other results, remove vertical search services, remove other content from around the web. That same approach that I described in lodging applies broadly to many other verticals. We won't go through them today because of, in the interest of time, but activities, things to do, other places, sites, other local search experiences follow the same broad patterns and principles. Flights is a little bit different. The reason is that when I'm searching for a hotel in London, our favorite Aloft example, many users go directly to that query for a specific property to look at its details. This is rarely true in flights at the itinerary level. We don't see a lot of users searching for Lufthansa 56 followed by Lufthansa 3218. Sometimes for flight status, this is a real query, but we don't have the same rich content to show, and there's trillions of flight combinations, so it's a much less common result. So the principles still hold, but a couple of changes. First, we have our flights Paris to Berlin query. We're showing a Skyscanner result. Can't quite see it here, but this lower section is highlighted in gray. There's a box similar to the carousel you saw previously with this rich result, what we call a rich web result, showing price and a bit of metadata around this being a nonstop round-trip flight, April 18th to 22nd. That rich web result is something that Skyscanner provides us and that we fetch in real time. This is, again, open to everyone in the ecosystem. It's free. And we think it really helps users understand the accurate, real-time information behind this flight. As many of you know, flight prices change incredibly quickly. So crawled prices are rarely accurate a few hours or days later. This is fetched in real time. Two other units to mention on the page. Similar to our hotels example, we have a flights site carousel. Here we have Skyscanner, Kayak, and the G from Google Flights showing up in this result. Again, these are ordered in the same order as those results on the search page itself. Google Flights is a good example here because there are links to Google's own services, but they're treated and ranked fairly and in the same consistent way as the other participants in the ecosystem. On the right, we have an airline options unit. This is the supplier view of the airline world. And here we're summarizing a little bit about this market. Of course, this is not exhaustive. It doesn't show flight numbers. It's rather a summary to give users an understanding of which operators fly that route and to give a little bit of a detail on price. The same filtering applies for flight sites to narrow down the view. And the same filtering applies to airline options. Of course, that may be a longer list for some markets. And of course, as I mentioned, shortcuts apply here as well, so a user can very quickly get to those common filters and common query patterns. So these principles, this approach applies across travel verticals, across Google Search. It's been a multi-year journey, dozens of sessions with the EU, with trade organizations, with suppliers, with metas, with OTAs, with our users, a large amount of research. And hopefully it's clear that we've made significant changes to search and a large investment in honoring and complying with the DMA starting today. We continue to welcome your feedback through industry bodies directly. Google is built upon these relationships with both our users and our partners who provide the data that powers this world. So we'd love to hear from you about these changes and about how we can always better fit the needs of the ecosystem and the users who ask us questions every day. Thanks very much.